Hi, I'm Zareena. Today we are going to take a look at descriptive essay. So far we have taken a look at both argumentative and we have also taken a look at discussion-based essay. Now those essays are factual-based essays. This is a creative essay. So what is the difference? But before we go on to that part, let me explain to you how to identify how a descriptive essay looks like. Okay, descriptive essays are very easy to identify because they already have the word describe in them for you. And another interesting thing about this question is it doesn't exactly ask you to come up with a story. What they are asking you to do is actually to describe an event or describe an incident. So that's another thing. First you'll have the words here, describe, then they will actually ask you to, they will actually tell you what you're supposed to write about. So look out for the word describe. They will have that word in there and usually they would have already told you what to write. This is a very important criteria to differentiate this type of essay from other types of creative essays, because most of the other types of essays actually require you to come up with something. They will expect you to come up with a story or they leave it to your imagination. But descriptive is, you could say, like a guided creative essay. They actually tell you what to do and what to write about. In this case, describe a time when you went overseas for a holiday. So all you have to do is describe a holiday. The next thing which I'm going to go through is to tell you what the teacher actually looks out for when they're marking a descriptive essay. Okay, maybe we can come over here. Okay, for a descriptive essay criteria, what the teacher actually looks out for is basically two things. It's the same thing for all essays, creative essays of course, content and language. But the difference is, in most creative essays, they will actually look a lot at the content, almost you could say equal weightage for the content and language. No doubt the marks for the content and language in the descriptive essay is also same. For example, it could be over 25 also, but over here for contents for a descriptive essay, there's really not much you can do because you are not creating a story, they're only asking you to describe. So over here you can score, but probably they will just look out for things like have they described the question well. So under contents, some of the points you have to take note is, okay, how well the description, how well a student has described the situation, or rather you can say how good a description. This is the most important criteria for content. Usually for descriptive essays, if you can get this part down, it's good enough. You can score actually very high for this. Okay, the difference between the content and language is, language of course takes note of things like your grammar. Okay, they're going to look at things like your grammar. Of course, they're going to take note of your vocabulary. I'm just going to put it down as vocab. And something which I'm not sure if your teachers ever told you, organization. Okay, so for a descriptive essay, one of the drawbacks of this is, although it's easy to come up with, the biggest problem of it is the marks, if you want to score, comes from language. That means over here, okay, yes, over 25, if you have a good description, they'll give you maybe quite high, maybe 15 to 20. But even this, if you notice, is related to this, your vocab. Because if you do not have the vocabulary store, you're not going to be able to give a good description. So in other words, if you're unable to have you don't have that kind of strength, you know, if you feel that, oh, you know, my descriptions are not very good, I don't really remember all the phrases and the vocab, don't do this question. It's easy, but you will not be able to score. And sometimes if the teacher is strict enough and feels that the description is really not that good, you can actually fail the compo. So this one, advantage, easy, you don't have to think so much of a story. Disadvantage, if you don't have the language, you're probably not going to score. Again, if the teacher is very strict, you might fail. Okay, let's look at these three factors now. Grammar, of course, your sentence structure matters. Now, since the strength of this entire essay depends very much on the language, you have to be very careful that your sentence structures are clear. A lot of students have a problem. A common problem for students is they give an extremely long sentence with many conjunctions. What do I mean by that? Oh, I was going to school one day when suddenly a car came, then I got a shock of my life. Goes on and on, there's no full stop. And another mistake children normally do is when the sentence gets too long, they just put multiple commas. No wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, but many of you are unable to write a long sentence which is structurally correct. So to solve this problem of sentence structure, keep your sentences reasonably short. If you are going to use a conjunction, what do I mean by conjunction? Like, oh, if you're going to join sentences using when, but, because, so, just use one of it in one sentence. So that will give you less problems. Okay, in case you don't remember, I'm going to write that down here. Short sentence that will solve your problem. Okay, and one conjunction per sentence. This of course applies to, in fact, all your essays. You can also apply this to your factual essay. But why I emphasize this for a descriptive essay is language. If the teacher feels that although you have used excellent phrases, very good descriptions, but your sentence is really quite bad, that grammatically is not there, you'll still lose marks. So another, okay, let's go to the next part of it. We've already covered one part of grammar. The other part of it is, of course, your tenses. I can't stress this enough. Okay, when a teacher reads your essay, in a descriptive essay especially, the tenses which you mostly have to use is past tense, obviously, because you cannot describe, you're describing an incident that has already taken place. So that should be easy enough if you remember. Mostly past tense. Okay. Of course, the other factor which a lot of students don't really think is important is your punctuations. Okay. This I do not find is a very big problem with secondary school students, maybe more for primary, but please take note still. For simplicity's sake, it is better to stick with just a full stop. Just a full stop and comma. Why am I saying this? Because some of you use other types of punctuations such as semicolons and colons. You can use them, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But please remember, if you don't know how to use them properly, you don't have to use them, because you will be penalized. Punctuation is still considered part of grammar, and if you have a lot of mistakes for that, you're going to lose marks also. So stick to something simple. All you need generally for your essays would be a full stop and a comma. And of course you know how to use them, right? A full stop at the end of the sentence, a comma if you're going to continue something. Again, when using commas, avoid using multiple commas. There are many cases which I've come across where one sentence can have a few commas. Again, not wrong if you know how to write it properly. If you don't, stick to something simple. Okay, so we have covered that, punctuations, sentence structure, tenses. Let's go on to the next one, which is your vocab. Okay, for vocab, now this one is really, I know a lot of you have this problem because you all, one, of course, most of us don't read, most of you guys don't read. And another thing is, another problem which I find is even when you read and you have a lot of phrases which you know, You don't feel comfortable enough to use them, or you don't know how to use them. One of the easiest ways to solve this problem is remember something. In a descriptive essay, yes, you have to describe, but you don't have to describe using bombastic words. You know, you don't have to say that, oh, the sky was illuminated by the bright golden sun. If you don't know words like that, that's fine. Well, they only want descriptions. You can use simple words. You can say that, oh, the sun rose up in the sky, the heat was unimaginable, sweat was trickling down my face. That is simple enough, and is still considered a description. So one thing you have to keep in mind is when you're using vocab, try your best to use good phrases if you can. Or one of the ways to score in a vocab which you may not be aware of is descriptions, and it can be simple. You can use simple descriptions, but it's powerful enough. For an essay, one of the things you have to remember is the story has to come alive. Especially for a descriptive essay, the story can only be felt. But because the only way you can score the points is to actually attract the teacher's attention, and the only way you can do it is to actually describe. If you don't have very good phrases, you don't know proverbs and all that, that's fine. Just describe. I will teach you on later how do you actually break up the different types of descriptions and how we can tackle that. But for the time being, let's just remember this. Another thing which I feel a lot of students miss out and which can add marks to your vocab is feelings. For some reason, most of the compositions are very bland. What do I mean by bland? To me, I feel like I'm actually reading a report. There's a vast difference, between a report and a story. The difference is the story must be alive. Okay, think of this situation. If, let's say, I were to go to a police station and I wanted to make a report that my wallet was stolen. So if I go to the police station will ask me questions like, okay, state your name please. Okay, I'll say, okay, my name is Zareena. Okay, what happened, Miss Zareena? Oh, I was walking, then all of a sudden there was, I wanted to pay something for, pay money for something, and I realized, oh, my wallet is not there. So for a report, that's good enough. But now if you're going to write a story, you can't just write like that. You must have emotions, feelings. So if I were to tell the same incident instead to a police officer, to a friend, if I were to tell it to a friend, how would I say it? I'd be like, oh, you do know what happened today? It was horrible. I was looking for my wallet. I couldn't find it. I felt so frustrated. You see the difference? So if you want to remember how to write, think of this. What is the difference when you re-account something to your friend as opposed to re-accounting it to someone more formal, like a teacher or a police officer? That should be the difference. Feelings is the easiest to score and the least used in most of a student's composition, okay? So try to write more feelings, okay? You may say that, oh, but then this is not an emotional composition, nobody died, nobody got married, there's nothing exciting to write. Remember this, we are human, feelings are in everything. Even when you describe a holiday, when you say describe a feeling, feelings doesn't just come when, oh, I went to Japan and I was very happy and excited. Feelings come in other words. In other forms also, like for example, I saw my first snowfall. I was happy, I've never seen snow before. Or you can say that I had original sushi. How do you feel about that? So feelings sometimes is not just about emotions, it can come from other things, which we'll go into a little bit of detail later. Okay, so we have covered these two, phrases and feelings. The last one is organization. Okay, previously in schools, they used to actually have, when they mark, a separate section which had organization in it. That means when they mark, there will be contents, language and organization. Usually they give about 5 marks for that. But now if you look at your compositions, they have taken that out. I'm not sure if some schools still practice it. Now why is this important? Keep in mind that even though that component is not shown in your marking scheme, it is still taken into account when they give you marks for your language. So organization, keep in mind there's about 5 marks, and these are easy marks to score. Why? if you want to score for organization, all you have to do is order your points. In other words, is remember how I discussed with you the structure of a factual essays like argumentative and discussion based. The structure, same. If you can follow a good structure for your story, you're going to get that 5 marks easily. Which means out of 25 marks for language, you already get 5 marks. So for this, what you have to do is to plan, which is something a lot of students don't do. Now, if you are a very good student, you don't have to actually plan a very detailed plan. When I mean very good, someone who can easily score 35 or 38 and above, over 50 for a composition, you probably don't need to plan, especially if you have not been planning. It's okay. Because most of the better students actually also have a plan, but it's in their head. They don't exactly have to write it out. But the rest of us will probably have to at least have a simple plan on paper. So whenever you're writing a composition, you can take a look at the plan. Okay, alright, I've done this, oops, I've not done that. And then you continue writing. What happens when you don't plan? What happens is, if you're unlucky, your story can be very disorganized. If you're very unlucky, the story will not make any sense. Then you fail your content. One thing you have to remember is, if you fail your content, you fail your entire composition. Why? Because the content, one of the biggest, most important criteria for content is, do you answer the question? If the teacher or the lecturer feels you have not answered the question, you're not going to pass your essay. So, this may be a very small component, but is equally important. So just keep in mind, a simple plan will do. I'll teach you later on how to actually plan for a creative based essay. So let's refresh our memory before we go on to the next part of the lesson. Okay, over here we have, remember how I taught you how to identify? Identifying a descriptive essay is easy. All you need is the word describe in it. Then the next thing you have to know is, they will always tell you what to write. So it solves your problem. You don't have to think. The next part is, what is the criteria for a descriptive essay? Remember, there's two components. There is your content, there is your language. Content, they will only base it on the description, how well you have described. Now, when it comes to language, I've already told you there's 3 components, which can be also applied to other essays, both creative and factual. Grammar, remember your punctuations. Stick to simple punctuations, okay? Full stops and commas will do. No multiple commas. Stick to 1 comma. Sentence structure, short sentences. Keep your sentences to maybe 10 words maximum if you can, as a guide. And 1 conjunction per sentence if necessary. 1 conjunction such as because, so, and. Anything that joins 2 sentences is considered a conjunction. Okay? For tenses in a descriptive essay, it should be mostly past tense. And we have vocab. Remember to use phrases if you have them. If not, descriptions will do just as well, simple ones. Remember to add feelings. When you talk about feelings, it also adds on to your vocab. Organization, roughly 5 marks, keep that in mind. All you have to do is to plan. Make sure your story, when you read it, has a flow. It makes sense from one paragraph to another paragraph. Make sure the teacher don't start wondering, how come the story starts in Japan and then ends in Singapore? Where's the connection, you know? Make sure the teacher understands. A good composition will leave the teacher feeling happy, excited, maybe wanting more, but understanding the story. There should never be a case where the teacher calls you up and like, how come your story is like this? I don't understand. Because if that happens, it means you have not been able to organize your story well. Okay, we have already covered the first part of descriptive essay. What we are going to do next is actually I'll run you through the structure of it.